At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Hello, and welcome to yet another fantastic episode of the Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast. On tonight's episode, we will be returning to the Orange Islands for a nice, good old snack attack. And here to join me on tonight's adventure as he tries to fend off a case of scurvy, it's Professor Chris G. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing great, my friend. How are you doing? I kind of know a little bit on the back end, but you think you'll be able to get through the episode today?
I think I snapped myself into the zone when I hit the record button, so
sweet. Hopefully
I can get through this episode and then I can die afterwards.
All right. Okay. Well, I do hope you feel better. So
I mean, I could go into detail, but I don't want to gross the people out. Because I could.
No, basically, you caught a case of the cold. You have a cold, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Cold, stomach bug, maybe the flu. Who knows? The world's going to end tomorrow. I'm joking, everybody. I'm joking. Yes, we are doing Snack Attack today, but this week that we are releasing this episode, if you're on the Patreon, this kind of speaks more towards you. But this is a big week for Pokemon. So not only are we getting the finale of Ash versus Leon on Pokemon Journeys this week, what's the proper way to say this without Nintendo striking us? There's a lot of people that have been given early access to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and that are actually playing it as we speak right now. You are listening to us as you are playing that game, and you people know who you are. And
yes, codes. Codes, yeah. I think, is what you're looking for.
There you go. They've been given special access to Scarlet and Violet, and the game's out. You can't put it up on YouTube or anything. Every place has been stopping it, but as of right now, it's out. It officially comes out a week from this episode, but you can actually go online and you can play it today if you have been given the special code, and people know what I mean when I say that, if you've been given the special code. But yeah, I have not played this yet, Doug. I have alluded to in the past that I may know of a way to play these things, and I may or may not be able to play it myself. But I will not be speaking legally on this until the game is officially out.
No, it's funny. You were concerned about me because before we hit the record button, my phone knocked into my microphone, and you thought that I had fallen over, given up, waved the white flag.
Yes.
So you're worried about me going down, and I'm all of a sudden worried about you getting taken out by one of those like secret agents that like keep the lid on leaks and stuff.
Well, I'm not the one that's leaking it. So as of right now, I'm safe.
And you wouldn't dream on playing it.
No. I would not play this game until it comes out legally. I paid my $120. I'm going to play this game the right way.
Right.
So Yes, everybody, but the special codes are out there for you. I'm not going to give that out to you. I'm also not going to talk about any of the Pokemon that are in this game that I know.
Well, you can talk about the start. You can talk about the starters. Those are public knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going with the fire type. I'm going to go with the crocodile. I always go with the fire type when I play these games when I first launch it.
I think it's funny that they did a fire type crocodile when they did Totodile for, gosh, was it Gold and Silver?
Yeah.
Hey, all right, good stuff.
So, let me see. Doug, I am gonna tell you something, and because I mean, and I'm at some point, I'm within the next 2 years, I am guaranteeing, and everybody listening to this podcast, I am guaranteeing, Doug, that you will be sitting down at some point and you will play one of these two games.
I won't have time for a Switch. I'll be on to the PlayStation 6 by then.
Oh, I know, right? For real. Nobody can get their hands on the 5, and then the 6 is going to be a virtual console.
Dude, I would be down. I would be down for that, if I'm honest with you.
You'd be down for a virtual console?
But they do need to kind of chill themselves out, because I was listening to a podcast a while back, and they were talking about the PSVR 2.
Oh, no.
That piece of hardware on its own was $500.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, for real.
And it's funny that we talk about VRs and stuff, because I'm currently 72 pages into Ready Player 2.
Oh yeah, you were excited to start that the other day.
Oh yeah, and I've dived in, and if it wasn't for other things going on tonight, I would be diving maybe another 72 pages into this book. But
Jesus Christ.
I did not watch last week's episode of Pokemon Journeys because I didn't want to be left on another cliffhanger, knowing that this week is the finale of this battle. So I'm going to watch them back to back this week. So that is my plan, and that is what I'm going to be doing on Saturday morning this week. Let's see. I'm going to reel this back because I got off topic.
Oh.
Guess how many badges are in this game?
Okay, well, by virtue of the fact that you even brought it up in the first place, how many badges? I'm going to say a nice round 20.
Ooh, you were close. There are 18 badges.
Ooh.
Yeah. So we're in this open world where you can get, and I don't know all the schematics yet until I actually play the game, but from what I've gathered, you can basically get some of the badges maybe out of order, and some gym leaders, depending on which version of the game you're playing, this part has been confirmed, change their type of Pokemon.
Ooh.
Yes. So depending on which copy of the game you're playing, in one version, you may say, I'm just throwing this out there, everybody. You may be fighting a fire type as opposed to you might be fighting a psychic type in Violet. So, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So it incentivizes playing both versions.
Yes. So, and obviously you have your the Pokemon that are going to be exclusive to each one, but you can trade them to each other to complete your Pokédex. So there's always that. I was mad, and this came out last night. That I watched this guy called Austin John Plays on YouTube, and apparently Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard, my favorite Pokemon, are not a part of this game until December 1st.
Ah, yes, DLC.
Yeah, well, it's not even DLC. It's they're hosting. So what Pokemon has started doing is they do special events. So when your Switch is connected to the internet, you can go to specific areas and battle Pokemon that they put out for just a limited amount of time, and you are given the chance to then catch the Pokemon. And for, I believe it's 6 days total, you'll be able to get an exclusive Charizard that can do some damage in December. So I got to make sure to plug my game in during that time frame to play and to get Charizard. But these 18 badges have me. It has me wondering here, because I want to know how, because I do know that there is going to be DLC to where you can get some more badges in the game, and I believe it's being rumored right now that in order to get into some big like championship realm, you have to get all 18 badges.
Well, I would imagine that anybody that ponies up, the $120 or whatever, but I would imagine that anybody that plopped down the $120 for both games, I would imagine they would want to get every badge.
Yes. And that's going to be me. I got the double version, and I'm fully ready for this. Oh, man, I'm so ready for this game. So we will see. And the way that you can crystallize some of your Pokemon in this game too, I'm kind of curious on that. Because you can change the type of your Pokemon in this game.
You mean like actual like fundamental type?
Yeah. Like you and like there's a thing called it's called terrorizing. It's weird. It's Terra, Tera, but it's terrorizing your Pokemon. So you basically get a crystal, and say your Pokemon is a fire type, you can now make it a water type Pokemon. Ooh. Or like a Pikachu that's weak against ground types. You can crystallize this Pokemon, or maybe put some balloons on your Pikachu, and since Pikachu is no longer on the ground, it's no longer weak against ground type moves. Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to. I'm so excited for this game. Like this game is hopefully what we have been waiting for in a Pokemon game, and they kind of got me hyped with Arceus when I was playing that, because I love that game. I was
going to say Arceus, I think, laid the nice groundwork.
I do hate that they took out the thematic of being able to walk up behind a Pokemon and just throw a Pokeball at it and try to capture a Pokemon. But
you mean the Ash Ketchum method?
Yeah. Ash Ketchum episode 1. So, yeah. All right. I am officially ready. Today we are doing Snack Attack. I feel like this episode is pretty straightforward, and this episode will probably be a little shorter than any other review that we've done, because I was watching this and I'm like, okay, if we don't go word for word with this, we can get through this episode probably as long as it takes to actually watch the episode. So, because this episode is pretty straightforward. It's about a Snorlax that's eating a whole bunch of grapefruits.
Yeah.
So, are you ready?
I'm definitely ready.
I know you are. All right, let me get past the theme song. Let's see. All right, and we start off with the narrator, and we start this week's episode like we start every episode in the Orange Islands, on the back of Lapras in the middle of the ocean. And they're just sitting there taking back the view. Wouldn't you get kind of tired being on the back of a Lapras? I mean, every time we see them, they're always so happy, Doug. I
would get seasick.
No, I think I think that will be in your head.
No.
No, have you ever been on a boat?
A couple times, and I was really young, which probably didn't help.
And you got seasick?
Got seasick.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry.
I think you might have had a good point about it being in my head. I was like, oh, I better watch out. I'm going on a boat. I'm not saying I made myself sick, but I'm not saying I didn't.
Okay. So, but yeah, we start this episode and they're pulling up to the 7 Grapefruit Islands. So Tracy is explaining that these islands are all right next to each other and they're very, very close to each other, and that there are 7 of them, and that they have the biggest grapefruits in all of the world. And they are famous for harvesting these grapefruits to go and sell. And what we soon find out, they have grapefruit peel candy that is very popular that our heroes like. So they're on their way over to Grapefruit Island, and right behind them as they're pulling up, what do we see? We see a Jigglypuff. So Jigglypuff is swimming right behind them. They have no idea Jigglypuff is there. And then they pull up to the island, and Ash is like, man, look at the size of these grapefruit. They're humongous. I'm sure there was a lot of jokes because I just have Vince McMahon in the back of my head.
Yes. 100%.
So I'm just thinking, because at the time that this episode came out in 2000s, this was the peak, like one of the peaks of Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Vince McMahon always talking about that he has these great big grapefruits. And and everyone telling him, no, you got some shriveled up little raisins. But it's just Ash goes up to this tree and he takes down one of these grapefruits. And as soon as he takes it down, there's a lady who's running up to Ash. And I think this is the funniest thing ever. She's like, stop, you thief. And Tracy's looking around and he's like, who, where? And she's like, I hope they catch this thief. And then she comes right up and she's holding a stick and she's like, I caught you red-handed. And if Ash didn't put his backpack and take his backpack off and put it in front of him, this woman would have smacked the shit out of Ash Ketchum's head with this stick. Like she swung this thing like a baseball bat, Doug.
Would have split his head like a ripe melon.
No, like a grapefruit.
Well, see, I was going to say grapefruit, but we find out later in the episode that these grapefruits are notoriously tough.
Yeah, very tough. But all right, Doug, I'm gonna hand the stick over to you to go over this next part of the scene after she swings her stick.
So basically, Ash and the crew basically are like, we just got here. We mean no harm. We're not, thieves. And, and then we see Lapras is relaxing in the water. And we pan over and she says, I've just been on high alert lately because somebody's been coming and stealing the grapefruit. And this is when we get a nice little, horticulture lesson, because Ash was under the impression that they grew by themselves.
Yes.
And Misty's like, yeah, we had no idea that these grapefruits actually belong to somebody.
Which, I mean, they didn't do anything wrong. I mean, they're sitting here apologizing. I wouldn't be apologizing. I mean, maybe I'm a little sorry that I was grabbing these grapefruits, but there's no sign there that says no picking these grapefruits. And what I'm a little bit more pissed off about, Doug, is these grapefruits were being eaten, but we end up finding out later on that in the midst of them being eaten, there's been like a whole bunch of like damage to these trees. And do they really think this little 10-year-old could manage to take down a tree? Like, seriously?
Heck no, especially considering that they only Pokemon he has with cutting ability is Bulbasaur.
Yeah, for real. Well, yeah, and we're gonna see Bulbasaur in just a bit in this episode. So, all right, you can continue, bro.
So basically, yeah, Tracy's like, we didn't mean to cause any trouble, and then, Ruby is explaining about how hard she worked to get the grapefruits where they are, and Pikachu this whole time is struggling to even lift one.
Yeah, being just so cute. All Pikachu wants to do is just eat one of these grapefruits, but Pikachu can't even lift the little thing. Feels so bad.
And then we get basically the rundown of how the grapefruits come to be, and they wrap the trees in straw during the winter to save from the cold. They inject the trees with insect repellents, and they take care of the weed.
Pokemon away.
And then, we see flash forward of grapefruits getting ready to bloom, and then they said they bring in Butterfrees from neighboring islands to pollinate the trees, and we see the end result, which is nice, big, juicy grapefruits.
Yes. Okay, so
Pikachu is still working on his.
So it is at this point that we come back to reality, and then all of a sudden we have one of the workers on the island is like, hurry! There's a disturbance over here. There's more grapefruits being stolen. And she's like, oh, hurry up. Maybe we can catch it. And Ash and the gang start walking over to, and as soon as we switch scenes, we see a whole bunch of broken trees. And from the broken trees, they're like, oh my gosh. They're like, they even tore off all the branches. And Ash is like, man, this is disgusting. And Misty goes, this is such an awful thing. They run some more, and they're like, over here, bring help. And they're like, where are they? And one of the workers is like, Ruby, which is the female that works on this item. It's not they, it's it. And they look over, and there's a big old Snorlax. And Snorlax is just having his way with all the grapefruits on this island, and they're like, Snorlax, and then we get
eating the branches too.
Yeah, maybe picking his teeth with them as well.
Yeah,
but Snorlax is sitting here, and he's taking all the grapefruits off. They're like, and we find out that Snorlax eats over 900 pounds of food before it goes back to sleep.
Didn't we know this?
Yeah, we did. Yes.
Right, that's what I thought. Okay, that's...
So, Snorlax, let's see. So Missy's like, I'd hate to be a grapefruit on this island. And Ash is like, man, what do we do? And Ruby's like, we need to stop that Snorlax immediately. And the workers walk over, and they're like, we'll do it, Ruby. And they just walk over to Snorlax. And as soon as they walk over, they're trying to pull Snorlax's arm. And Snorlax literally takes his arm and is like, get off me. And flings all three of the workers at the same time in the same direction onto the floor. And they're like, and Tracy's like, man, I guess he's saying, don't disturb me during lunchtime.
And Ruby is confused about how Snorlax could have even gotten in the island on the island in the first place.
And you know what? So I would have been a little confused too if I didn't know that Snorlax could learn surf. But
yes.
But Snorlax is one of those Pokemon that is not a full-blown water Pokemon, but can learn surf. So, all right, you can continue.
Because he's big enough, he ain't going to sink.
Yeah, exactly.
And Ash is like, well, instead of worrying about how Snorlax got here, let's figure out a way to stop him, because if we don't, all the grapefruits are going to end up being gone. And he's just nom, 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 nom. And
so
they get the idea to preemptively cut down the grapefruits with the help of their Pokemon.
Yes. So it is funny. So Ash takes out Bulbasaur, Misty takes out Staryu, and they just start cutting all of these grapefruits down off of the tree. Staryu is probably the most effective out of everybody because Staryu's just flying across and just cut. And they finally get a big pile of grapefruit. And they're like, man, this was a sitch. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. And Snorlax is like, Snorlax, Snorlax. And it's running towards all of the grapefruit. And
he is hoofing it.
Yeah, he is. And this Snorlax, for as big as it is, can definitely run. And this is a fit Snorlax. So Ash jumps in front of the grapefruit and is like, you're not going to eat this grapefruit. And Snorlax goes, the fuck I'm not. And just literally palms Ash. Ash goes flying. And Snorlax just sits down and is like, thank you for cutting down all these grapefruits. And just starts eating the grapefruits like a bag of potato chips.
Yeah, I mean, he's just like 4 or 5 grapefruits at a shot. And Ash is like, all right, so that didn't work. What do we got for ideas? And Tracy's like, how about a battle? So perfect. And he tells Bulbasaur to use Vine Whip. And it's not doing anything.
Nope.
Snorlax is just going ham. And
Snorlax
Misty's
like, thank you for scratching my back with those vines.
And Misty's like, Bulbasaur's the one that's getting whipped. And then he calls out for a Razor Leaf, and all that accomplishes is Snorlax holds up a grapefruit, and it gets cut into perfect little quarters.
Which
he just nom.
Which I do want to point out that if Bulbasaur's Razor Leaf can do that, Ash's Bulbasaur is a pretty high level because these grapefruits are sharp. I mean, not sharp, but they're tough. And his Razor Leaves have to be pretty sharp to get through the grapefruits the way that it just cut into it. Right, Doug?
Well, and I think he is because, if we go back, however many episodes, Bulbasaur was basically fighting off the evolution ceremony.
Yeah, I remember that.
So, and then all this battling, quote unquote, just kind of pisses Snorlax off, and he says, oh, this is how we're going to end this. And he just body slams Bulbasaur, basically.
He squashed him. Oh,
Pikachu was able to get out the way.
Yeah, why couldn't Bulbasaur run? Like, Bulbasaur literally sat there and was made a floor mat at this point. I felt so bad.
Misty's sitting there. It's not nice for Snorlax to be throwing his weight around like that.
And then Snorlax goes back over and just starts eating the grapefruits again. And he starts rubbing his belly. And Ash's like, I think Snorlax has finally had enough. And Misty's like, yeah, I think it's going to go to sleep now. And we'll just have to sit here and wait. Snorlax is right up and just starts walking away. I was like, all right, I'm done with this tree. And then he goes and sits over in another corner and just starts going to town on all these other trees again. So that didn't work. And then we get basically an all-day view where they've been chasing this Snorlax around all day. And you get a pan of the hills of the island, and you see all the grapefruit on the island just getting eaten. And Snorlax at this point has eaten all the grapefruits on this island. And they're like, man, those were the last 2 grapefruits on this whole island. And Missy's like, yeah, at least he ate all of them on this island, but you have them on the other islands, and he's kind of stuck here on this island.
Or so we thought.
Yeah, exactly. And Ruby's like, yeah, I'm kind of grateful for that. But Snorlax gets right up, starts waving its arms in the air, and Ash is like, do you think Snorlax is getting ready to fly to another island? And Misty's like, not unless it has a ticket on a jumbo jet. And then all of a sudden, you just see Snorlax just jump up, and he just starts swimming. And the way he's swimming, he is body flopping. He's just arms
He is
out.
going ham in this water. He's just hubba, hubba.
Humma. And Tracy puts 2 and 2 together at this point. He's like, I should have put 2 and 2 together and figured that Snorlax was a good swimmer, because how would he get on this island anyway? So it's at this point that Snorlax is on its way to the second of 7 islands at this point. And Snorlax is just, I'm going. And they all jump onto Lapras, and Ruby's on a speedboat, and they're on their way chasing Snorlax. And Ruby's telling all of her workers, she's like, I'm going to tell everybody to start gathering all the grapefruit that they can before Snorlax gets to it. And then we go straight from that to Jesse and James. Doug?
We see James has a pair of scissors, and he's individually chopping a pile worth of grapefruit, and Meowth is like, it's raining vitamin C, and we sure could use some.
And Meowth is here, and Meowth is like, you know what? These grapefruits actually look really, really good. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to eat one of these. And Meowth takes its paw and tries to paw open one of the grapefruit, and the grapefruit is so tough that it looks like it breaks his 3 little paws. And Meowth is like, I broke my paw. And James is like, maybe these are the type of grapefruit that isn't grown for its fruit. And
Meowth is like, well, if you don't eat them, what do you do?
Exactly.
And James is like, one of my favorite treats as a child was candied grapefruit peels that the servants would give me. And we get another bit of James getting dunked on for having servants. Jesse's like, oh, servants, that must have been the life.
And James is over here just blushing.
And so Meowth's like, so we got to turn the peels into candy. And she's like, no, we're going to turn the grapefruits into cash because we're going to turn around and sell them.
Which is not a bad idea. Like,
no,
not at all. And again, there's no sign saying that they can't take the grapefruit. And it's at this point that they're walking back to their submarine, and then all of a sudden here comes Snorlax, and Snorlax is like, and he jumps onto the island and brings a whole bunch of water with it and throws the submarine onto the island and completely wets Jesse, James, and Meowth, and they drop all the grapefruit. And what does Snorlax do? Snorlax sits down and he's like, oh, thank you for picking these grapefruit. Man, these people on these islands are really nice for picking these grapefruits for me. And he just starts going to town on these grapefruits and just eating them. And James is like, he's stealing the grapefruits that we were stealing. So I guess they did have in their head that they were stealing these, Doug.
Yeah. And we hear off screen, hey, what are you doing on the island? And it's Misty coming up on the island that Team Rocket's on. And Meowth's like, well, this is perfect. We can end up with a 2-for-1. We can get Pikachu and Snorlax.
Yes.
And they come up and
we get a who's that Pokemon. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say they see Snorlax has his back to them, and Ash is like, this isn't going to be easy, which, I mean, how many times have you dealt with Team Rocket? Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
And then, we get the who's that Pokemon.
And it's Ivysaur.
Why is it Ivysaur?
Because they're telling Ash, you should have an Ivysaur, and maybe this would have been a little bit easier for you.
Ah.
There you go. Will you take that?
We come back, and Ruby is on the phone, and she's like, I can't believe Snorlax has gotten to another island. And
they have a nifty little computer that I guess they have like little servers inside of the ground or something to tell that when someone is standing on the island, because Snorlax is on the island and they can tell exactly where Snorlax is according to these maps.
And the first island he's on is completely red, aka Aaron. And the first tip of the second island is now blinking red. And the guy on the phone's like, how are we going to stop this? And Snorlax is just not even blinking. He's just hum nom.
Yep.
And
eating all these damn grapefruits.
And then Ash is like, well, I've had enough. I'm going to catch this Snorlax. So he calls out Squirtle. And he tells him to use Skull Bash. And Squirtle picks up power and just bounces right up his ass.
And Snorlax then he's like, why are you touching me? And he's like, come here. And he just full-blown body slams Squirtle. Like, dude, does Ash's Pokemon not have like agility at all? They just get terrified? Or do they just need to be told, okay, move in order to move?
Oh, Pikachu has Quick Attack.
Yeah, exactly. But Pikachu also has enough brains to go, oh, he's using Body Slam. I'm going to move. And while Bulbasaur got squashed. And now freaking Squirtle's sitting here and he's like, that wasn't a good idea for this Skull Bash. Squash.
And Misty calls out Staryu to use Tackle, and it just bounces off of Snorlax's head. And then Misty, I think, gets caught up in the moment, and she calls out Goldeen, and obviously Goldeen really needs to be in a bottle of water because it's just flopping, and she's like, oh, shit, my bad.
And we do get told that that Snorlax ended up using Headbutt. His move Headbutt on Staryu, which is what ended up knocking out Staryu. But yes, Goldeen is just flopping on the ground, and then Ash and Tracy do a anime fall, but then Snorlax, she doesn't call Goldeen back right away, and Snorlax is like, "Oh, fish." And he picks up Goldeen, and he's getting ready to put Goldeen right in his mouth. And Missy's like, Goldeen's not on the menu, Snorlax. And she returns Goldeen right before Goldeen becomes dinner.
Right.
And she better put Togepi away because Snorlax could be like, oh, eggs.
And yeah, because she tells Togepi to use metronome, and Togepi's like, I'm just a baby. And, they kind of dunk on her. They're like, oh, Togepi's just a baby. He doesn't know any moves.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's a good point. And Snorlax is going to eat anything. So she's like, yeah, better just hold on to old Togepi.
And then Team Rocket comes out and Meowth is like, since you guys can't do it, Team Rocket will do it. And Jessie sends out Arbok to use Poison Sting attack on Snorlax. And Snorlax comes over, Body Slam. And Arbok becomes a floor mat as well. I want one of those. Looks nice. Meowth is like, Arbok looks like a snakeskin belt. Which that was a good line. And then all of a sudden Jessie sends out Lickitung, and she's like, Lickitung attack, and Lickitung sends out its tongue, and Snorlax grabs the tongue and just wipes his mouth, is like, oh, thank you for the napkin. And Jessie's just getting so pissed off. She's like your Lickitung's tongue is not a napkin. And James is like, Victory Bell, I choose you. And then Victory Bell goes and gives James a big old kiss by putting him inside of its body. And Snorlax, and James is like, Snorlax, not me, Victory Bell. And Victory Bell starts going over and body slam. And Victory Bell at this point has become a rug as well. And James even alludes to it. And Misty's like, all right, I'm going to send out the best Pokemon, Psyduck. And Ash is like, Psyduck's your best Pokemon? And Misty's like, if Psyduck uses its psychic attack, it'll be perfect against Snorlax. And instead of getting a headache right away, Snorlax drops one of the grapefruits right in front of Psyduck, and Psyduck is like, I'm going to eat this, and just eats it. It must be a little bit on the spicy side. Or
no, he didn't chew the son of a bitch.
Oh, yeah, I was about to say, or he didn't chew it, and he was choking. And yeah, he didn't. He was choking, so his body turns red, and he's just running around. Misty's like, you should have known you were gonna choke if you didn't bite it. And Psyduck is like, sigh. And then Pikachu is like, all right, I'm gonna go over there and use Thunderbolt. And Ash calls out for Thunderbolt. Pikachu goes over. Thunderbolt, and this is the only attack that seems to do anything to Snorlax, because Snorlax is like, ah, and he just kind of shakes it off at this point, and then just continues to eat. He doesn't bother Pikachu and go, I'm gonna body slam you. He's just like, oh well, that was unfortunate. Doug?
And Ash is like, oh, Snorlax must be shockproof. And Ruby's taking a look at the monitor, and she's seeing that the red is getting more and more on the second island. And we see trucks are pulling out with grapefruit, and she's like, we have to save as many as we can. And one of the guys is like, you need to get to the processing plant as quick as possible. And she's like, right. And, Snorlax is just chowing, and Ash is like, what do we do? Our Pokemon are no good. And this is when we get another
vignette from Team
harebrained idea from Team Rocket, because they haven't been blasted off yet.
And James is like, ladies and gentlemen and twerps of all ages, keep your eye on the pendulum. And Snorlax is like, ooh, shiny. And James is putting it back, having the pendulum go back and forth in his hand. He's like, yes, now just relax, Snorlax. Your eyes are getting heavy. You're getting very sleepy. And Snorlax is going back and forth. And James is like, on the count of 3, you'll fall completely asleep. 1, 2, 3, and James snaps his fingers, but instead of Snorlax going down, James goes down, and he went nighty-night. And Meowth comes over, and he's like, hey, you ain't supposed to be the one sleeping. And Ash is like, but putting Snorlax to sleep is not a bad idea. And Missy's like, how do we do that? And how do we get it relaxed enough to fall asleep? And they get the idea to massage it. So Tracy and Misty are massaging its foot and its leg, and Ash is working its side. And they're like, man, you're really tense, Snorlax. Just relax. And Snorlax is like, oh, well, I guess. I mean, the people on this island are really, really friendly. Now I'm getting a free massage. And Miss Ash is like, there must be some way to get it to doze off. And Misty's like, I've got a great idea. Listen, Snorlax, picture a beautiful, wide open pasture with a red sunset. And all your cute little Snorlax friends are there with you. And she's like, I wonder how many Snorlaxes there are. How about we count them? And then you just see 1 Snorlax jumping over a fence, 2 Snorlax jumping over a fence, and we fast forward, and Missy's like 97 Snorlax, 98 Snorlax, 99 Snorlax, and then she falls asleep on Snorlax, and Snorlax was sitting there counting, and he's just counting with his hand. He's like, oh, I like this story. He's like, 98 Snorlax, 99 Snorlax, and then Misty just falls asleep, and Ash does what Meowth just did and was like, Misty, you're not supposed to be the one falling asleep. And then Psyduck walks over into the frame. Doug?
And, Psyduck comes over and he's like, ah. And she's like, I wouldn't be laughing because if you were competent, we wouldn't be in this situation. And he's like, meh. And then we see Jessie is in a Snorlax costume, pretending to be Snorlax's mother. And she's like, it's Betty by time Snorrykins, and she pulls out a sleeping bag and she's like, sleepy, sleepy, sleepy. And she covers herself and she's like, it's time to take a happy little nappy and I'm getting diabetes. And
and James and Meowth comes over and like, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, little Snorlax. And Snorlax must have some PTSD from this song because
either that or Team Rocket's just not good singers.
Yeah, for real. Snorlax just gets so mad and he gets up and he does a mega kick right over to Team Rocket, and now Team Rocket is gone from the episode and they are blasting off.
I mean, he kind of went Shawn Michaels a little bit.
Just a little bit. And then Tracy is like, I got the best idea out of all three of us. He's like, all we have to do is find Jigglypuff and get it to sing. And my thing is, how do they know Jigglypuff followed them to this island if they didn't see Jigglypuff at the beginning of the episode?
I think they're just hoping at this point.
Yes.
They're like, well, Jigglypuff usually shows up when we don't want it, so maybe if we call for it,
it'll show up. So we get a back shot of the island of island number 2 being eaten all the way up, and all the grapefruits are basically like 80% gone at this point. Our trio runs back over to Ruby, and they're like, and she's like, "I'm so glad you're here. Take a look." And they look all down, and they see all the workers are asleep at this point. And our trio looks down and they see that everyone has been drawn on, and they're like, "Oh, Jigglypuff had to have done this." They're like, "Oh, perfect. We're looking for Jigglypuff." So they get the bright idea of making a stage for Jigglypuff. So we fast forward, and Snorlax is now leaving Island 2. It has finished with Island number 2, and it's now on its way over to Island 3. And Ash is like, we got to build a stage for Jigglypuff. So they build a stage on Island 3. We fast forward. We have markers for Jigglypuff. Colored markers, yes. And we have a stage made specifically for Jigglypuff with its picture and everything. Doug?
And they're like, this is perfect. Jigglypuff loves to hear itself sing, and we've made a special stage for it. And Ash is like, it's going to show up here any minute and give us a special song. And when Snorlax starts to go to sleep, I'm going to be ready to catch it. And Pikachu's like, all right. And then we see Snorlax is coming up with a branch. And Ruby's like, if it eats the grapefruit in the warehouse, we're fucked.
Yes.
And Ash is like, we got to get Jigglypuff. So he starts like doing a clap, chant for, Jigglypuff, Jigglypuff. And, everybody gets into it. And then Jigglypuff pops out from behind a tree and is like, y'all calling for me? And she looks and she sees the stage and she's like, oh my God, it's happening.
They want me.
And she skips over to the stage. She does a little front flip. And they're like, all right, Jigglypuff, let's hear it. And Jigglypuff starts singing his song. And immediately the humans are starting to doze. Togepi's done. Pikachu's hanging on by a thread on Ash's shoulder.
Snorlax finally goes down for the count.
And then Ash is like, right, I have a job to do. He runs off. Like you said, as Snorlax starts wobbling. And he tells Pikachu to use Thunder. And, it hits because Snorlax is like, fuck. And starts wobbling, and he falls against a tree and completely cracks the tree in half, which isn't good for the trees. We're trying to save them.
Yes.
And then Ash is like, all right, go Pokeball. And it bounces, and Snorlax is asleep. So you figure Snorlax isn't going to put up much of a fight, and it shakes a couple times. And he's like, all right, I got a Snorlax. And he falls asleep, and his hat's cockeyed, and Pikachu's like, all right, and I'm done too. And Jigglypuff finishes its song and sees that everybody is asleep. Puffs up, grabs the markers, and is like, art.
And starts drawing on everybody. And it's at this point Jigglypuff kind of walks away and does his thing. And everybody wakes up, and it is now dusk. And the sun is going down. And Ash is congratulated for catching the Snorlax. And we come to find out one of the workers runs over to Ruby and is like, you won't believe this, Ruby. Everywhere that Snorlax was eating the grapefruit, there's now a whole bunch of little little grapefruit plants all around the island. And they come to find out that Snorlax, even though Snorlax was eating all the grapefruit, it was also laying down seeds everywhere on the island for more trees to grow. So they're now going to have an abundance of grapefruit on the island, way more than what they've had in the past. And Ruby is appreciative at this point. And this is kind of a callback a little bit, because now when Snorlax Mega evolves, it grows like a whole island on its belly.
Oh.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
So Snorlax actually does good for nature. And
here's my question.
What's up?
Ash caught the Snorlax.
Yes, he did.
There's no more Snorlax to be, pollinating islands.
That is true. But they also now have all of these extra trees from the island. So if you think about it, so Snorlax ate up all of Island 1 and Island 2. So if you think they're going to have like triple or quadruple the amount of trees that they had on those islands before, they're going to be good. So Islands 1 and 2 is probably going to be the most favorited islands outside of Islands 3 through 7. So Islands 1 and 2 is going to have the most grapefruits.
That's a good point.
It's at this point that our heroes are like, they're all happy, and they're like, we're going to have more grapefruits than ever. And everyone says bye to our heroes. Our heroes are sent on their way. None of them have any grapefruits with them. And it sucks because they just helped that whole island, didn't give them any grapefruits. Maybe it's in Ash's unlimited storage backpack. And then we get the to be continued. And that was...
Oh, no, but...
What happened?
They did get a bag of candy.
Oh, they did. The grapefruit peel candy. Okay, my bad.
Yes. Which apparently is delicious because Togepi and Pikachu were all about that life.
Yes. But we got the to be continued logo. Ash got a new Pokemon. And that was it. We are done with this episode. What did you think of this episode, Doug?
I had forgotten that Ash actually caught the Snorlax. So that was a nice little surprise. Because, I mean, how many times has he said, I'm going to catch that Pokemon, and then he gets sidetracked or he just doesn't do it. So for him to catch it, that was pretty cool. We didn't see it transfer, so I think he had an open spot, yes?
Yes, he did.
So... he's got the Snorlax, and he knows how powerful the Snorlax is because he saw the body slams and he saw the headbutts and he saw the way he knocked away those security guards.
So
I don't know if that's an attack or if that was just him being annoyed. But
so he does have a really, really strong Snorlax. Hopefully, he's able to train the Snorlax properly to be able to use it in the future.
And how about? And I don't think it happens, which is why I'm proposing it. What about using Snorlax to get from island to island and give Lapras a break for a while?
For real. So, I mean, that would be kind of a rough, because Snorlax wasn't really like floating. It was kind of like doing like belly flops. So I think that would be kind of hard for Ash and them to kind of ride unless he trains Snorlax to kind of just float there and like maybe use its arms and just like float on its back at that point. But then Snorlax probably could really see where it's going.
I was going to say, allow me to play devil's advocate. What we saw with Snorlax doing the blubberfly, as Ash so delicately put it, that was a wild Snorlax.
Yes.
This is a captured Snorlax, and he can go out in the water one day and he can be like, all right, float and gentle strokes.
You're not wrong.
But you also might have a point about it being a rougher ride because, Lapras has the benefit of a shell. Snorlax is just kind of wide.
Yeah. So, but I didn't say it at the beginning of this episode. This episode did air April 29th, 1999 in Japan and March 25th, 2000 here in the States. And the Japanese title to this episode is Gluttonous, Kabigon, Huge Panic. So, yeah, I'll take Snack Attack any day over.
Yeah, easily.
So, what do you give this out of 5, Doug?
You know what? It's a funny episode.
Yes.
It had the added benefit of Ash getting a new Pokemon. Team Rocket wasn't too much of a nuisance. I think this barely edges into 4.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be right behind you because he does end up getting a new Pokemon. So I'm right behind you. I'll go 4 as well this week. So,
sweet.
All right. Well, that being said, I'm going to give you a nice little break and I won't ask if you have anything else to say because I'm sure you don't because I'm sure you're over there dying. So go ahead and say goodbye to our audience for this week, Doug.
Bye, Doug.
And this is Wrestling Chris G letting all of you know, make sure you go over and subscribe to our Patreon to listen to even more episodes than what you are hearing as of right now. Other than that, I will see you next week for another episode. So have a good night, everybody.